YouTube, it's Jackie. How's it going? If you're new to me, it's the first time you're seeing my face, hello, what's up? My name is Jackie. I sit on my floor and I talk about books. So that's why you're here, because that's what's going to be happening today. If you're not new to me, thank you for always tuning in, the continued support. I really do appreciate it. So today for you, as you can see from the title down below, I have a book review, and this is on Ella Jacobs, Not Yours to Keep. And it looks like this. Ella Jacobs is a up-and-coming author. This is her debut novel, and I met her through TikTok. She was teasing her book with some TikTok reels, and they seemed really interesting. I liked a few of them. She reached out to me, asked me to review her book, and when she told me the synopsis, I was like, hell yes, sign me up. And she sent me a copy, and that is what we'll be talking about today. So without further ado, grab yourself a drink, have yourself a seat, and let's get talking about Not Yours to Keep by Ella Jacobs. All right. So a little bit behind this book. The author is Ella Jacobs, as I've already said. Its release date is October 24th of 2022. So if you are seeing this beforehand, it is not available for purchase just yet. But after October 24th, 2022, you'll be able to find it on Amazon in ebook and paperback format, along with Kindle Unlimited. So here's the stats of this book. We have a first installment in a trilogy. So we do have a cliffhanger ending, no HEA as of right now. We also have a BDSM romance with an emphasis on the BDSM lifestyle rather than just sexual practices. We do have some images of sexual practices within this. So there are some triggers for spankings, food intake, extreme submissive and dominant behavior, sadist and masochistic behaviors as well. But I do want to emphasize that this is more on the lifestyle. So it's the outside the bedroom BDSM world. Okay. We also have a Dom wide shoes element going on in this, which is really kind of cool, along with age gaps of 11 years and age gap of 20 years. There is graphic sexual content, and there is some dubious consent scenes as well. So now that you know the triggers of this book, why did I choose this book? Well, I chose this book because I was really intrigued by the TikTok reels that Ella Jacobs was putting out there. Those were awesome. They were great. They were such good teasings. And she did release a YouTube trailer. I will link that down below as well for you guys, so you can go check that out as well. And they seemed really interesting, and I do love a good BDSM romance. So that's one reason why I reached out to her. And when she asked me if I wanted to review her book, I wanted to make sure that she knew what I was about. So I actually linked up my Wicked Dom series review with a few others and had her look at them before agreeing to send me a copy of the book. And she liked what I had to say. So I feel like this was going to be something up my alley. I like age gaps. I like BDSM. I like dubious consent. I like this dark feel. And there's also this musical element to this book, which was really, really cool, which really interests me a lot too. So these are some of the reasons I picked up this book, and I was not disappointed. I had a great fucking time with this book. I had a great time. But before we get into the actual synopsis of the book and what I believe worked and didn't work, there's a few things that I do have to go over. Because this is a BDSM romance, I want to make sure that for you guys as a viewer, if you are not familiar with BDSM romances, you are familiar with some of the technical terms that I'm going to be using, so there's no misconstrued or misinformation. So BDSM stands for bondage, discipline, dominance/submission, and sadomasochism. Most people, when they think of BDSM, they just think of whips, chains, ties, and spankings. It is much more than that. It is a lifestyle, it is a way of living, it is a mindset between these two people. It's consensual, and it's a very intricate lifestyle. Bondage in regards to BDSM is the restricting of partners' freedom and movement within ropes, handcuffs, and other restraint types. So that's the bound and all that jazz. The discipline is the agreed upon rules and punishments for a dominant partner to exert control over a submissive partner. That one comes into heavy play in this book, so I want to make sure that was laid out. Dominance is the act of showing dominance over a physical partner, either during sex or outside the bedroom. In this book, it is more emphasized outside the bedroom because it is more of a lifestyle component. And submission is the act of showing submission to a dominant partner's actions and wishes. Again, outside the bedroom, heavily focused in this book in particular. And sadomasochism is the pleasure or sexual gratification that a partner may feel from either inflicting pain, which is the sadism side, or receiving pain, which is the masochism side, either physical or emotional. And this element is displayed in this book as well with some of our DOMs. I also want to go over what dubious consent is, because that is a trigger for a lot of people. Dubious consent was coined by the fan fiction community to make visible the gray areas between rape and consent. So for example, situations where distribution of power may limit an individual's ability to give meaningful consent to sex. So in this instance, a sub not giving consent for sex because she's already previously given consent to her dom to make decisions on her behalf. And I want to make that really clear, because there is some moments in this book where it's pretty gray, but you have to understand that she, as a submissive, has already given up all of her choice and openly consented to her dom to make decisions on her behalf. Okay, so I wanted to make sure that those definitions were out there and they were laid out before talking about this book. So here's the summary. So we have Clara, who is a piano student in a dominant submissive relationship with her opera singer boyfriend, Marcus. Very sweet couple. Marcus is 11 years older than Clara, so he is the lesser age gap. But Clara has a chance to spend an entire summer with Marcus, which is probably the most amount of time they've ever spent together during the relationships based off of what you're given in the book. And while he's preparing for this opera that he is working on, she will be staying with him. The opera that he is currently working on is being conducted by another fellow dom and also his best friend. And I believe you pronounce his name Grigory. It's Grigory. I don't believe it's Gregory. I think it's Grigory. I'm not 100% sure on that one. So, but Marcus knows that Claire will become, because he knows her as his sub, he knows how she thinks, he knows how she reacts. He knows that if she doesn't have anything to do, she's going to fidget, she's going to get in trouble, and it's not going to be a good time. So he arranges for Grigory to continue her piano lessons. Now, Grigory's a world-renowned conductor, so this is a huge freaking deal for Clara, just to be having a piano lesson with him. But what she isn't enlightened about is that he has also made arrangements for Grigory to dom Clara as well. So basically be another dom to her submissive. And because Grigory has not experienced a submissive in quite some time, and Marcus believes that he's losing out on a beautiful part of his life, so he wants to share his submissive with Grigory. Grigory's dominant nature is on point. It is there, but he very much lacks the aftercare element. And that's where a lot of our drama really comes from in this book, because this story is not of a BDSM lifestyle going well. This is a BDSM lifestyle shown going well through Marcus's way and not well through Grigory's way. And it's told entirely from Clara's perspective. So we are getting this entire story from the POV of a total submissive. Before I get into telling you what works and what doesn't work, I do need to preface this. This book, as excellent as it was written, as beautifully as it was written, Jacobs does a really good job handling this topic. She writes it with tact, she writes with grace, she writes with beauty. All of these things going into it. I do have to state this, that in my personal life, BDSM is nothing more than a tool. It's a toy that gets put in the drawer and pulled out if I want to use it. It is not a lifestyle for me. It is just something that you do every once in a while. And there is nothing wrong with anybody doing this as a lifestyle. I have no shame. You do you. You rock it. As long as it's all consensual, you have a great fucking time. But for me, this is just a tool to make things spicy every once in a while. Okay? But with that being said, knowing my personality and knowing my personality traits, I am more of a dominant person in my personal life. I I don't like being told what to do very often, and I don't like being weak or showing weakness. Although I'm a big crier, but I don't find crying a sign of weakness. And in my personal relationship, me and my husband, we are equals. So where I am sub, he is more dominant. Where I'm dominant, he's more submissive, and we balance each other out. This dynamic only stays behind closed doors for me. It is never comes out of the bedroom. So this was actually quite difficult for me to read at some points because of who I am as a person, because I related more with the doms in this book than I did with the submissive. So I just wanted to make that clear going into it, that I had a great fucking time with this book, but because of my own personal nature, some of the areas of this book were difficult for me to read. So I do want to make that a point to tell you guys that when I say this whole book is from a submissive's perspective, it is. So if you are not a very submissive person to begin with, this book may enlighten you. It may freak you out a little bit. It may piss you off some. It can run a gambit of emotions for you. So, all right. What worked? The original plot. I love this. I love the idea that was pitched that this is a story about a BDSM lifestyle going south or going wrong, because you don't normally see that. In the BDSM books I read, there's still this nice happy ending at the end. We don't have that. We don't necessarily have that just yet, because we have a cliffhanger, because this is the first one in a trilogy. So I really enjoyed this concept. I enjoyed how it was displayed. I really enjoyed the original relationship of Clara and Marcus, because we get a pretty solid footing of them before we introduce anybody else. We have a pretty good idea of kind of the relationship, but throughout the book, we still strengthen that relationship as well. And I really, really appreciated that. The elements of the BDSM lifestyle that were portrayed, I thought were portrayed very, very well. I have zero issue with the way Jacobs portrayed some of the elements in this lifestyle. We do see kneeling, we see crawling, we see feeding from the hands, we see a constant concern of eating and sleeping on behalf of the dom to his submissive, the habits. You see the care, you see the compassion, you see the dominance, you see the strength, you see the submissive, you see all of these little bitty elements all forming this really beautiful picture of this couple of Marcus and Clara originally. I love the fact that she showed through Marcus and Clara the dom needing to take care of the submissive sexually and emotionally. It's not just aftercare and a physical aftercare from dealing with the actual welts and bruises that can happen from an intense dynamic that they have, but it's more shown through the casual caresses, the holding, the cuddling, the making sure you're okay, not letting her fester too much. There are multiple times in this book where Marcus lets her kind of go through the gamut of emotions and eventually is like, no, we're done. We're done with this. You need to start facing this. And it's very unique and very, very interesting the way that she displays it. It was really, really well done. The POV from the submissive perspective lends itself to the beauty of this book. As I stated earlier, this perspective can make it very difficult to read, but the way Jacobs displays the subspace of Clara, holy shit. Oh my God. That was amazing. Oh my God. As a very dominant person, I cannot relate to subspace. It's not a space that I've ever been in very long or deep enough to actually really constitute a subspace environment. So when you're reading the subspace moments that Jacobs writes for Clara, it is so eye-opening. It is so intriguing. It is so intense. I got goosebumps at some points because I was just like, oh my God. Like, she is literally, that is it. That is all you have is just what he is saying to her and what he's making her feel. And it's so intense. Oh my God, it is so intense. I had to set it down a few times. I had to. Mostly because I have never been that deep into it, but it was just, oh. But Jacobs does throw us a bone for us people who are not that submissive, who do not understand what that sub-deep space feels like because they've never truly experienced it, or they're just refusal to accept it. I said earlier, there's a beautiful musical component to this book. There's a scene where Gregory is playing the piano and Marcus is singing, and he's an opera singer. And I love opera, okay? So that was immediate, like, okay, I get it. I get this. And Clara is kneeling on the ground and she gets lost in the music. And the way Jacobs describes that lost moment is directly parallel to when she describes the subspace and other intense moments for Clara. And so when you see that side by side, it's like a fucking light bulb. It's like, oh, because I can relate to getting lost in music and be completely surrounded by this where nothing is going on. All I hear is this. It's just like a sound cavern and nothing else. You don't feel anything else except what you're hearing. And that's what's telling you what to feel. And I can relate to that more than I can relate to a subspace. So having that comparison and described the same way was fucking brilliant, and I loved it. That saved so many scenes for me in this book. The intense subspace scenes that made me feel uncomfortable because I was just not okay with it because I can't put myself in that position. I could relate back to this musical scene and realize this is what's going on in her head right now. I get it. I don't know what it personally feels like, but I can kind of get some semblance of what's going on with her as a character, making this very submissive person more relatable to somebody who is not a very submissive person. So I thought that was just fucking fantastic, and I was so grateful, and I love that moment. I loved it so, so much. Thank you for that, because that made this book something that I could really get behind and really, really enjoy. I fucking love that so much. I also love the fact that not only we see the beautiful aspect of the subspace, but we also get to see the drop from a sub's perspective. From the people I've talked to that are in this lifestyle, my own research, sub drop is something that happens after you've been in deep subspace for quite a long time. It can display itself in multiple different ways. And for Clara, it's just a lack of feeling. I feel nothing. I'm in a fog. I'm in a daze, kind of almost like coming out of anesthesia. Like you see glimpses and images of things, but nothing really actually makes sense and nothing's being put together. And the way Jacobs describes Clara's sub drop, oh my God, it is heart-wrenching because you know from the experiences we have with Marcus and Clara what the Dom needs to do. And it's not happening because Gregory does not have it in him right now. He's not there yet. He can get you there. He can get that in that subspace, but he can't gradually take you out of it. And then you see him having to relearn how to do this with Clara. So she's like a guinea pig. And it's so heart-wrenching and it's so depressing. But when it works and you start to come out and you see him bring it out in her, bring her back out of it, it's so awesome. It's so fucking good. Oh, it was great. But going through it, damn, that sucked. That sucked in some scenes. It really hurt. Like, there's a lot of visceral feelings in this book, the way Jacobs writes this book. I just was very, very, very excited about it. Another thing that worked in this book was the comparison between Marcus and Grigory in the aftercare. As I said, Grigory didn't have it in the beginning, so you see these subdrops really early on in their dynamic. And Marcus has to kind of bring her out of it, but Marcus refuses at one point to bring her out. It's like, no, you have to do this. You have to take care of her. She is not just something to be toyed with and thrown away. And I love that. I love that Marcus was dominant enough to know that, to stand up to another dom and say, hey, you're fucking up, asshole. Go fix it. Yes, she is mine. She's my responsibility, but I gave her to you to treasure and to take care of. You don't get just to beat her and walk the fuck away. And I love that Marcus did that and made sure that the aftercare got there and made sure Grigory was the one that did it, because that's what mattered. Because he could take care of Clara all he wanted, because she knew that she belonged to Marcus. There was never any doubt. There was never any question. Grigory, that's where the question was. She was so deep into subspace that when he didn't help her come out of it, she felt less than and useless and a toy and nothing of value. And having Marcus tell her that she was not going to do it. So it had to be Grigory to do it, because he's the one that put her there. And I just love that she wrote Marcus to be that dominant of a person, to say, get your shit together, get your ass in there, and fucking take care of it. And I just, I love that. I loved it. The intimate scenes in this book. When I mean intimate, I'm not talking about the BDSM dynamic scenes where we have with Grigory. I'm talking about the intimate scenes of the aftercare when Marcus has made Grigory go back in there and take care of it. The way Grigory just completely washes this dominance away and becomes this super delicate, soft pillow to land on after having this abrasive experience. It was so awesome. The scene where he curls up in bed next to her and says, I'm sorry. I'm not good at this, but I'm sorry, and I'm trying, and you're making it difficult because you're so submissive and you're so perfect at it. I'm just like, oh fucking God, I'm about to die. I about lost it on that one. I did, because being a dominant person, I know how hard it is to say you're sorry for things. I know how hard it is. So I related a lot with Grigory at that moment. And I'm just like, I know exactly where he's at right now. And the way she just embraced him with that apology, and she took it, and they had this little moment of this intimate, just perfect gooey mess of emotions. And it was, oh, so fucking good. It was awesome. It was so good. I was so excited about it. Yeah, the intimate scenes were definitely on point for this. Marcus is a dom. I really liked him for most of it. And I say that because I'll get to that in a second. But he was always there. He was always there to pick her up, even though he didn't always pick her up because it was Grigory's job. But when he caused it, he was there. And when she was not coming out of the subspace fast enough or quick enough, he was there. I love that. I loved how well he knew her, how well he understood her. But he didn't talk down to her. And I really enjoyed that when he was making sure she ate and drank food, and she ate and drank and calling. It seemed more of a concern and checking in, not making sure. It was just, hey, have you eaten today? He had this so smooth of way of dominance that it didn't necessarily look like dominance. It just looked like a caring boyfriend. And I freaking loved it. You didn't really see the dominance until, for him, it was more of like kind of the super sexy fun times. That's when you really got to see that dom come out in him. There was a few times where it wasn't super sexy fun time that you saw it, but for the most part, they just had a very understanding, very consensual, very awesome fucking kick-ass relationship. And I fucking loved it that he could tread this line of dominance so well that he could just, with a look, turn it on, turn it off. But yet he never fully turned it off. And I just Oh, I loved it. I loved him for most of it. I loved how he wanted her to flourish, how he wanted her to succeed. I love that, how he built her up. I thoroughly enjoyed him until we get to the one instance where I didn't agree with him. And this is what starts off of what I didn't think worked in this book. And I'm going to revert back to my previous statement. I related more back with the doms in this book than I did with the submissive. So this is why this instance pissed me off about Marcus. And it made some of the more intense scenes very difficult for me. Marcus is Clara's dom. She has given herself to him, hook, line, and sinker. He makes decisions. He calls the shots. We don't ever see that consenting conversation, okay? This dynamic is already set up prior to us walking to the book, okay? When Clara is at a rehearsal with Marcus, and Marcus watches the way she reacts to just Grigory's presence, he takes it upon himself to then plan the piano lessons. That same day, she has not gone home. They've not had a private conversation. She's just watched him rehearse. After that rehearsal, he says, "You're going to go have a piano lesson with Grigory." What? She is ecstatic. World-renowned conductor, wants to have a piano. Oh my God, this is amazing. Yes, yes. And he looks at her and says, "Everything he's going to do to you, I've okayed. You remember your safe word." And it's written in the book that she's kind of like, "My safe word? It's Shrek," which I thought was hilarious, by the way. I love that safe word. That was fun. I really wish I knew the story behind that safe word. Oh wait, yes, I do. They do get that story. They do. Sorry, my bad. They do get that story. I want to know the story behind why the author chose that safe word. Sorry, let me rephrase that. I want to know the reason the author chose that word as the safe word. I thought that was kind of unique. Anyway, she goes into the piano lesson thinking it's just a piano lesson. And then Grigory takes his baton and hits her just on her arm, or I guess playing the piano just on top of the arm, hits her quite a few times. And then Marcus comes in after the end of the lesson and says, "Looks like somebody was kind of bad." I understand that in this dynamic, and it's stated in the book, Grigory stated, "Well, you belong to Marcus." And Clara says, "Yes, Marcus gave me permission to do this, so it's okay for me to do it." That's stated in the book. This is where I have an issue with Marcus, is because I never saw a conversation with Clara asking if she was okay to bring in a third person to their dynamic. In the beginning, we get this conversation later on in the book when things start to become a little bit more intense and sexual. Right now, it is just beatings. Now, Marcus knows that he doesn't discipline her hard enough that she wants. He has enough intuition about his sub that he knows that. But for me, as a dominant person who doesn't like to share, this grated on me. Because even if it had just been a simple conversation, "Are you okay with this?" prior to it, I probably wouldn't have had an issue with some of the more intense scenes between Grigory and Clara before that consent conversation actually took place. I felt that that wasn't the best dom moment for Marcus. Especially also since the fact that he wasn't present for any of the lessons. Maybe if he had been present for the first couple and then stepped away because he realized everything was copacetic, everything's good, I might not have been, he wasn't. He just kind of, here you go play with her and have fun. I'll be back in an hour. Like, he's just dropping his kid off to be babysat with somebody who's gonna beat it. That grated on me a lot, because I have no problem with dubious consent, and that's where this dubious consent really comes in to play, where instances like this, and then further on down the road we have our super sexy fun times. But I would have much rather had that initial conversation. Maybe after he saw her with Gregory, the way she reacted with him present, and then gone home and said, Gregory's a dom. He hasn't had a sub in a while. I want to know how you feel about sharing your submissiveness with him. Because in my mind, now again, not a submissive person, but at one point in time, Clara gave her submission to Marcus. In her eyes, he earned that submission. Gregory has not. The only requirements that Gregory is meeting is that he happens to be Marcus's best friend. That's it. That is absolutely it. And I just feel like that wasn't a healthy form of a BDSM lifestyle. Again, not in it. But I can't get behind someone who wouldn't even consent to at least talk to them about that. Yes, he ultimately makes the decisions, but we never saw that consent. But we clearly see the shock in her face, because it's written in the book, that this is coming out of left field. So in my mind, it's telling me they have never discussed bringing in a third party into the dynamic. So I just don't think that was a very good dom move. So some of the more intense scenes that Marcus had to go and get in Gregory's face and be the dominant alpha guy, say, go clean this up, is more of him saving his own ass, because he didn't take care of her in that moment. He didn't give her all the information she needed to make that decision. But with that being said, she consented to give all of her consent to him, all of her decision-making properties to him. So she is trusting him. And so on the other side of this coin, you see a true submissive showing complete and utter loyalty to her sub, to her dom. And that was really fucking scary for me, because Gregory only hit her, but as the hitting gets more intense and the beatings get more intense, her subspace gets darker and darker and darker. So I felt like some of those really dark moments would not have been so hard for me to read. And then the other thing that I didn't feel that worked was there are moments during the submissive lifestyle components, where we are in Clara's head and she's thinking about what's going on. But instead of just kind of telling us what's going on in her head, it feels like she's almost trying to justify her behavior. She's trying to justify that this is okay. And one scene in particular is she's kneeling at the table and Marcus is feeding her from his hand, and then Gregory is feeding her from his hand. And she says, to most people this would look awful, but to me, I know this means I'm protected and I'm treasured and I'm safe here. Why are you trying to justify a behavior that you willingly put yourself into? A lot of the extreme submissive behaviors felt like at times she was trying to justify that it's okay. And I don't know if that's the author trying to do that, or trying to convince non-lifestyle members that this is accepted, this is okay in this lifestyle. I don't quite know, but I felt like that justification didn't need to be there. It didn't. This book did not need the justification because it was written so well that I didn't feel like it needed to be there at all. So that got kind of irritating to me just a little bit. And it made those unique scenes where you see the lifestyle just not leave a bad taste in my mouth, but made me think twice about them. Like, even the sub has to try to justify why she's doing this behavior. If you're okay with this, why do you feel like you're justifying? Why do you have to justify to the reader that this is okay? That bothered me, because if you're proud of what you're doing, if you're happy with what you're doing, you're consenting with what you're doing, and you enjoy it, who gives a fuck, you know? And so that's kind of where I was with that. Now, we do have some super sexy fun times in this book. They're quite nice. Ella Jacobs is not shy about the super sexy fun times, and I appreciate that a lot. We have graphic language, graphic BDSM training and punishment scenes, dubious consent scene with like a throuple component. There is one moment where after the premiere of the opera, things get spicy with both members, not at the same time, but they were all present, and that was a really fucking dope scene. That was awesome. That was great. That was fantastic. The buildup was there for her and Gregory. The build was there for her and Marcus. I loved that. That was fantastic. It was great. And we have a lot of unique locations, so I gave this 3 chili peppers on the chili pepper scale. All right, my final thoughts. If you like BDSM romances, I think you will appreciate this. I think you will appreciate it because it is a different look at a BDSM romance. It's not just whips, chains, and spankings. It is the emotional BDSM relationship. It is the give and take between a sub and a dom. It's the heart of a BDSM relationship. And I think a lot of people who practice BDSM will appreciate this book. People who don't practice it will still appreciate it because Jacobs gave us so many non-BDSM experiences to be able to, equivalent to be able to kind of understand the BDSM side of this, so we can still relate with the characters. She did that quite often. If you are submissive at heart, I believe this book is something that you could definitely relate to. I think you will see a deeper story than I did. Very much so. I believe I lost some of this book because I am not a submissive at heart, or a true one. So I think a true submissive would really, really appreciate this book. A person they can relate to, that understands what sub drop is, what the beauty of subspace is, what it feels like to be in that kind of dynamic. They can understand what it feels like, and they can really relate to it, because sometimes you read books to relate to people. Sometimes you read them to escape. Sometimes you read them to learn new things. I believe a submissive definitely could relate to this book. If you are a dominant, I believe you could enjoy this book as well, because it gives you a look into the subspace that you're putting your subs in. And if you don't know what you're actually causing them to go through, how do you know to properly take care of them? I feel like this could facilitate conversations between dominant and subs. I very much believe that especially in the aftercare area, I could definitely see a dominant person reading this book and saying, when we do this, is this what this drop feels like for you? Because I know what it physically looks like, but is this what it feels like? Do I need to do something extra to make sure that you are 100% taken care of? The aftercare component of this book is extremely important, and I think dominants could definitely learn a few things experiencing a BDSM lifestyle book from a submissive perspective. Definitely. I do plan on continuing the series when she releases it. I think this is a great start to it. I'm really excited, especially with that cliffhanger. I'm really anxious to know how that next level plays out. I'm really excited about that because that's going to be really interesting. And I do want to say that I really wish I could have given this 5 stars. I only gave this 4. But that is personally because of the whole lack of consent from the very beginning. That is my own personal thing. So for many people, I believe this would be a 5-star read, but for me, it is just 4 stars because I feel like Marcus should at least talk to her before he brought in a third person. And it's not to say that he didn't, we just don't see it on page. So, yeah, that's my review of Ella Jacobs' Not Yours to Keep. And Miss Jacobs, if you are watching this, thank you so much for letting me read your book. It was a beautiful look into the mind of a submissive. It's not a mindset that I've really ever experienced to that degree. And I am so excited to continue with this series. And I really, really hope that the next one comes soon, because this was excellent. I had a great, great time with this. And I hope you continue with this storyline. And I'd love to see the character arcs. And even though I had a problem with that little bit of consent, I still think Marcus and Gregory make really good. They make a really good dynamic in the story, showing the juxtaposition and the opposite sides and everything. And I think what you told me, you definitely conveyed. And I think you did a fantastic fucking job. And I'm so excited to read the second book. So I hope it comes out soon. All right, guys, I will see you guys all soon with another video.